Good afternoon. My name is Laura Hopkins. I am the EIR Accessibility Coordinator at the University of Texas in Arlington. And our gathering today is a training on how to ensure that your PowerPoint files are accessible to those with disabilities. So I encourage you to follow along. Open up PowerPoint on your computer and go through these steps with me. So you're actually creating a file as you go. So these can be your notes, but I will also send everyone on this call the presentation file that I am using today. Anytime I share a PowerPoint file electronically, I include this slide. It's possible that someone that receives my PowerPoint file uses a screen reader, and I want them to know that there is text in the notes section and how to access it. Now, I believe you are on this call because you are in the world of accessibility and you already know what it means to be accessible. We want to provide equal access, whether someone has a disability or not, whether they're colorblind, whether they're blind, whether they're deaf, whether they can't use a mouse, whatever the issues may be, because 25% of the population has some type of disability. That's a lot. And so we want to be sure that we are following best practices so that our PowerPoints are accessible to as many people as possible. When I present this training to UT Arlington, I get to invoke our principles of community. Your agency may have some similar document that you can refer to, but in addition to being a legal requirement to be accessible, we want to be accessible, right? We want our customers, our clients, our students, our employees to receive the information that we are trying to give them. We do not want to put barriers in people's way that excludes them from reaching information. If you came to the PowerPoint class last week, you know that I like to work off of checklists. Our checklist for today only has 7 items, and most of them are very similar, if not identical, to the word checklist. So some of today will be repetitive of the word class if you attended that last week. So here's our checklist. These are the 7 things that we are going to review. We're going to start with the hard one. If you already use Slide Masters to create your PowerPoint files, then you are way ahead of the game. If Slide Masters is something that is new to you, this is going to be the change. Change is hard. Using Slide Masters isn't hard. Forcing yourself to change the way you make PowerPoint slides can be hard. It was difficult for me. I had made PowerPoints the same way I'd always made them for decades by drawing a text box. You cannot do that. Let me show you why. So I'm going to draw a text box. All right. I'm going to go to View and then Outline View. And over here in my outline view, I see the title of my slide, What to Avoid. And I see the instruction, never draw a text box on a PowerPoint slide, right there. But this text that I typed in the text box that I drew is not present. The screen reader will only read what shows in your outline view. So if you start a PowerPoint slide and you only draw text boxes, none of that slide is going to be accessible. So if you have a PowerPoint right now and you want to know, hey, is this PowerPoint accessible? Well, first thing you do, open it up, go to View, and then go to Outline View. If you do not have any text over here in the outline view, that means that you drew your text boxes. You pushed this button and drew a box and typed in it. That is not accessible. So instead, what we do is we use slide masters. Probably right now, if you go up to your home button, and right beside your new slide button is a little down arrow. If you click there, you will see the slide masters that are available to you. Each one of us is going to see something different there, most likely, but you should have something there. I don't expect anyone's slide master library to be completely blank. So please pick one, doesn't matter to me which one, and type in it. I'm going to type in my second field. And now when you go to View, Outline View, you will see that that text appears. And that indicates that a screen reader will be able to access this information. Now, something that UT Arlington has done to facilitate accessibility is our Office of Continuous Improvement, which is part of OIT, and our university communication teams got together and they created a PowerPoint template file. And that's what file I'm using here today. As part of the template file, they actually have information throughout the file about accessibility. These aren't my presentation files, slides, and I'm not going to read them to you, but I am going to leave them in the document. It is a source of good information, and especially if you share this with others who don't get to come to the training or watch the video, it will be good information for them to have. The nice part about starting with this template file is that my slide masters are already set up. They have the appropriate branding. They have an accessible font. Remember in the Word class, we talked about having a block font such as Arial or Helvetica, and not the default Microsoft Calibri font that is often used. Now, in case you don't have a communications team to develop a template for you, I want to show you how to create your own slide masters. So we click on the word View. It's just past the Review button at the top of your PowerPoint program. And then click on the button that says Slide Master. It will show you the slide masters that you already have available. But you can also insert your own slide master. All right, so you click on Insert Slide Master. And then over here under Master Layout, you have some options on what do you want to have on this slide master. Do you want a page number field? Do you want a text field? I'm going to say yes. Do you want a footer? I'm going to say no. And no, I don't want a date field either. Now, I am going to resize this text placeholder. And just for grins, I'm going to put DIR on this template so that I can distinguish it from all of the other slide masters that I have on my computer. I can also, I can also insert, I tell you what, I'm going to just click on one of these others and grab this placeholder. Do you see how this placeholder has other options? Yes, it has text, but it also has a table icon, a picture icon, a graph, video. You know, it's kind of a universal placeholder. So I'm just going to copy and paste. So let me pull this so I can see it. And now I'm going to copy it and paste it some more. So here's the deal. You can always delete placeholders. But remember, you can never draw a new box on a slide master. So often you may not know when you start creating your slide, how many boxes you need. So I've got one that has one universal box. I've got one that has two, and then I go to 6, and then I have like 15. Knowing that I can just delete the ones that I don't need. This is also where you could create slide masters with different colors of backgrounds. So I'm going to copy and paste this page because I want all these placeholders. And I'm just going to right click on the background, click Format Background, and I'm going to go in and put a color. Let's pick a blue. All right, so obviously here I am not going to want to use a black font, right? So I'm going to change my text color to white. And I'm going to do that on all of my placeholders so that every time I pull out this slide master, it's going to be ready for me to work with. I'm not going to have to edit what color my font is going to be. All right, I'm just going to do those 3 in the interest of time. Let's pause for a moment. Any questions about how to add fields or how to create a new slide master in PowerPoint? All right, Cindy gave a thumbs up. I understand if you've never used slide masters before, it could feel daunting, and just take it from me. I've been there. And if you will just force yourself, this is the way I'm going to do it from now on, it doesn't take long at all till it becomes just the way you do it, right? You don't even think about it. I will confess, for me, it hit home when I hired someone who was blind. And so I was forced, for lack of a better word, to begin using slide masters, because we would often receive PowerPoint files, internally, and if they were not accessible, I would have to make them accessible to share them with my staff. All right, so I'm going to close out of slide masters. Before I hit this button, I want to make sure you understand it will allow you to navigate to these buttons while you are in the slide master template. So just kind of keep that in mind. If things aren't working quite the way you expect, check and see if you are in slide master and close that master so that that takes you back to your normal view. All right. Obviously, when you're in that slide master, you can set all of your fonts, your colors, your backgrounds, all of that sort of thing. These are some of those tip pages that I'm going to leave in this presentation file to share with you, but I'm not going to review them with you. So using a slide master, that is number 1 on our accessibility checklist. When you create a new slide, you click on New Slide and pick from a slide master. If you don't have one that has the formats that you need, go to View, Slide Master, and create the slide master that you need. All right. Item number 2 on our checklist is alt text. And it works just like it works in Word, just like it works in Outlook. If you have an image on a slide, you right-click it, you click on View Alt Text, and you either type in your description or you mark it as decorative if it is only a decoration. We may have people on this call that weren't in the Word class, so I'll just quickly say, if your graphic has text in it, the text should be repeated in the alt text. Obviously, any important information from the graphic needs to be included in your alt text. And if you use acronyms such as UTA, let's say this was a UTA logo, put spaces between acronym letters when the letters are actually announced. But if it's an acronym that is said as a word, like the SAR Center, then you would not put spaces in. So that's number 2. Any questions about alt text or how to add alt text? All right, let's talk about color. Two things you need to remember about color. Number one, ensure that you always have sufficient color contrast between the font color and the background color. And number two, never rely on color as a single identifier. So let's talk first about color contrast. If you are using the default Microsoft Office color theme, if you ignore the first column on your color palette button, because that's gray and you would never use gray on white, but if you stay on the bottom row, you won't ever have to check it. You will always have sufficient color contrast. But if you move up in that row, even one row, you have to start checking, because it is likely that it will fail the requirement of 4.5 to 1. So 4.5 to 1 is the requirement for WCAG-AA. And that is the requirement for electronic documents per TAC 213 based on Section 508. All right. So if you want an easy solution, stay on the bottom row. If you want more options, you're going to have to start checking. Another thing I want to mention about the color contrast, the legal requirement is 4.5 to 1. But that's the minimum, right? That's the minimum you have to reach to be legally in compliance. But that's a floor, not a ceiling. It's not like a speed limit where the law says don't go over 70 miles an hour. All right, 4.5 to 1 is the bare minimum you have to reach to be compliant. I encourage you to do better. If you look at the contrast between black and white, that's 21 to 1. So 4.5 to 1 is not very much contrast, right? Let me go back and grab that orange again. All of us in the UT system, yeah, we love our orange. Let's see, here we go. So, 3.3 to 1, that is really low, which is why it's a problem, right? Your oranges, yellows, reds, greens, those are going to be problems for you. I saw a YouTube video last week called One in Every Room, and it was referring particularly higher ed or education in general, that because 8.5% of the US population has color blindness, you should expect there's one in every room. So it's, 8 out of 100. It's 4 out of 50. It's 2 out of 25. It's 1 out of 12. All right. Color blindness is very common. There's different types of color blindness. There's different severities of color blindness. And then there's age, right? As we age, our eyes lose elasticity, which means we need better contrast, or the words start to look fuzzy. So those of us that are seeing that big 6-0 coming up at the speed of light, we need sufficient color contrast to be able to read the text. And I tell you, I've reached the age where I, especially on my phone, if I look at something and I can't see it, I just go on. I just can't take the time to try to make it bright enough to figure out what it's telling me. So be sure that you understand what colors are accessible and to check if you're not certain. Any questions about how to check color contrast or about color blindness in general? All right, when we talk about not using color as a single identifier, if you are typing in PowerPoint and you type a URL, it will change it to blue and underline it. That's just the default. That blue against that white provides sufficient contrast. We do not expect anyone will have difficulty seeing that the link is there. It must be underlined. And the reason that is even though someone can see the text, if they can't see color, they may not understand that this text, the URL, is a different color than everything else in that sentence. So that's why hyperlinks must always be underlined. And that's true whether you're talking about a PowerPoint file, an email, a website, hyperlink text must be underlined. And just like in Word, PowerPoint will do it for you, so just don't break it. Any questions? I'm going to pause for just a second and try to look at the chat.
Nathan just showed us a really nice tool. It's a great tool. Kind of shows what stuff looks like with someone colorblind.
Right. This TGPI tool will also do that. I can't think off the top of my head how to make it do that, but I'll try to figure that out and send it to you. All right, I'm going to just very quickly pop into slideshow mode for this next slide. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Swap. There we go. All right, Microsoft Office. The default colors are blue, orange, yellow, and gray. Only the blue passes against white. So you're always going to have to update their colors unless you've set your own accessible themes as the default for your instance of PowerPoint. You're going to have to update it. Now, let's pretend all of these colors were sufficiently contrasted against the white. We expect everyone to be able to see them. Just imagine if you printed this out in black and white. Would you be able to determine which data set is which? And I think the answer is no. That some of those shades are so close together, you wouldn't know which one is the raisin line versus which one's the pecan line. This graph that we're looking at relies on color as a single identifier. So instead, you have to add pattern. So now I have sufficient color contrast for each data set. It can be seen against the background. And even if they can't determine for sure which line is the blue line, that's okay, because they know which line is the dashed line. Right? All right, so far we've talked about you have to use a slide master, you have to use alt text on images. Color, you're going to ensure you have sufficient color contrast and never rely on color as a single identifier. Now let's talk about tables. So tables is almost identical to what we reviewed in Word the other day. You just go up to insert. I'm sorry, you do not go up to insert table. You have to come to your placeholder box. Oh my goodness, I nearly told you wrong. You come to your placeholder box, you click on the table icon, you tell it how many rows and columns you want and say insert, and that will give you your table. If you didn't put in enough rows, that's okay. You can right-click insert and add more rows or columns. Now then, you have to add alt text to the table. So you right-click, having trouble finding my right-click. View alt text. I don't know why I couldn't see it a second ago, but if you right click on this upper left corner and then click view alt text, this is where you type in a description of the data that is in the table. You are not retyping the data, right? It's going to read the data. So this is just text that describes what is in this table. A list of names and phone numbers. All right, so that's the alt text. The other thing that you need to do is click the table so it's selected. You should see this table design button at the top of your PowerPoint. Click on that and make sure that you have header row checked. All right. Tables are for data. Data has header rows. PowerPoint is a very good application to use if you want to make an accessible PDF. And by ensuring you have your header row selected, you are going to have the correct tags when you send it over to PDF. So it's easy to make it accessible here. It's very difficult to make it accessible over in Adobe Acrobat. All right, tab order. So this is something unique to PowerPoint. This is not something that we discussed in our first class or in our Word class. If you tab through, take your hand off your mouse and tab through your slide, that is the order that the screen reader is going to read your slide. So for this one, it's going to say tab order, pour oatmeal into the bowl, add milk, eat carefully. All right, that's not right. That's not going to make any sense, right? So I have to set my tab order. And this is something you have to check on every slide. If you are on a Mac, you are going to click on the Arrange button. And then the first selection says Reorder Objects. It's going to visually present you with all of your placeholders, and you simply drag and drop them until they are in the proper reading order, left to right. And then you say, OK. If you are a Windows user, I'm sorry, it gets a little bit more complicated. I have screenshots to help me. You have two options. It makes no difference to me which one you choose, but I encourage you to choose one and stay with it. But it's important to understand that there's two options, because if you're talking to someone else about the proper reading order, one of these is going to read top to bottom, and the other is going to read bottom to top. So just be cognizant when you're talking to someone about setting reading order in a PowerPoint slide that you know what option you are both using. Let's start with the reading order option. Under the Review tab, on the Check Accessibility button, there's a little down arrow. If you click on that button, one of the options will say Reading Order Pane. And this reading order pane is going to appear to the right of your document, and you can click on an item and move it up or down to put it in the proper reading order. And this will read top to bottom. A different option from your home row, when you hit the home button at the top of your PowerPoint application, under the editing group, click on the select button and then choose selection pane. So again, the pane will appear to the right of your document. You can click on each item, use these arrows to move them up or down. This is going to read bottom to top. Any questions? All right. Check. You need to check accessibility. During a slideshow presentation given online like this one, do most screen readers work? Is there anything we need to do in those cases? No. If you are presenting visually, like I am, the screen reader, like let's say you were using a screen reader, your screen reader is interacting with Teams. So you can hear me speak, but you're not actually touching the PowerPoint that I am showing you. So the risk is if I fail to properly or accurately describe what I'm showing visually, then that would be the barrier. It would be on me, not on the PowerPoint. I see someone typing. The screen reader will only pick up the most present window, usually virtual meeting software or a video player. Thank you, Victor. Okay, so we need to do 2 checks, just like we did in Word. In fact, my laziness has appeared, and you can see that I used the same screenshots from Word for PowerPoint, but it works exactly the same way. You're either going to click on the review button and check accessibility, or if you don't have the check accessibility button there, you are going to click on File, and then Info, Inspect Document, and that's where you will find the check accessibility button. So when you run the check, it's going to appear to the right of your document. It will tell you if you're missing alt text. So follow the instructions and find the ones that are missing alt text and put in the alt text. It will tell you if you need to check the reading order. Once you tab through the slide, I expect it will disappear off of your results. It will tell you if you have slides with identical titles. It suggests that you shouldn't, but that's really going to be up to you. All right. If you see intelligent services, suggested alternative text, fix it. What that means is that you have an item with computer generated alt text instead of real alt text, and you can count on it not being sufficient. So this is me having a computer generated alt text description on my screenshot that is not sufficient. All right. If it gives you a warning about insufficient color contrast, look at it, because my experience is that if it gives you a warning, it is insufficient. Let me go back to where I was. All right, there's one more check we need to do, and that is the view outline view. You should read through your slides. If you have JAWS or NVDA and you have a screen reader software that you are familiar with, run it through there. Make sure it's announcing everything properly. But if you don't, then you can visually read through and ensure that everything that is typed on your slides is present in the outline view. Now, alt text does not appear in the outline view, but it will be announced by the screen reader. Now, I want to talk just a second about PDF. PowerPoints are a good way to make PDF flyers. They tend to be more graphic design friendly than Word, but there are some limitations. So first off, make sure that you do not have any animations in your PowerPoint file, because those will be garbage in PDF. Also, you're going to have to check your fonts. If you are trying to use unusual fonts or uncommon fonts, if they are not in Adobe Acrobat, that's going to perhaps cause you an issue. Also, any text you have in the notes pane will not be transferred to the PDF. It's only going to bring slide master text images from your slides. Just like we talked about in the Word class, do not use the Acrobat Create Adobe function, but instead file, save as, and download it as a PDF. Okay, the rest of the pages in this document are from our university template. It's good information, so I didn't want to remove it because I'm going to share it with you. But that is the checklist. Slide Masters is the big one. Alt text on all of your images, charts, tables. Be sure you have sufficient color contrast. Be sure you set your header row and alt text on your tables. Check your tab order. It is likely that you're going to have to correct the tab order. Check your outline view, run your accessibility checker.